For nearly 2,000 years, one piece of land in Jerusalem has remained at the center of one of the world's greatest mysteries. Kings have fought over it, empires have conquered it, religions have revered it, archaeologists have searched beneath it, politicians debate it, and millions of believers around the world continue watching it with growing anticipation. Why? Because according to many students of Bible prophecy, the future of that small piece of land could play a remarkable role in the events leading to the end of the age. It is known as the Temple Mount. Today, one of the most recognizable landmarks on Earth stands there. Yet beneath centuries of history lies a question that refuses to disappear. Will a third temple one day be built in Jerusalem? To some people, that sounds impossible. To others, it seems inevitable. And for many Christians, it raises an even deeper question. Does the Bible actually predict it, or have generations of believers misunderstood what Scripture is saying? The answers are not as simple as many assume. The first temple, built by Solomon, stood as the center of Israel's worship until it was destroyed by Babylon. Generations later, the second temple rose from the ashes, eventually expanded by Herod into one of the ancient world's most magnificent structures. It was there that Jesus taught. There he overturned the tables of the money changers. There he warned that not one stone would be left upon another. And in AD 70, exactly as he foretold, the Romans destroyed the temple. For nearly 2,000 years, no Jewish temple has stood in Jerusalem. Yet remarkably, the expectation of another temple never disappeared. Not among many Jewish communities, not among many Christians, not among students of biblical prophecy. Because scattered throughout Scripture are passages that seem to point toward a future temple connected with extraordinary events. But before we assume we know exactly what those passages mean, one important truth must guide us. Prophecy deserves careful study, not rushed conclusions. Because sometimes the greatest mistake is not ignoring prophecy. It is becoming so certain of one interpretation that we stop listening to the whole counsel of Scripture. And nowhere is that caution more important when discussing the mystery of the third temple. The expectation of a future temple does not come from a single Bible verse. It emerges from several passages that, when read together, have led many believers to conclude that another temple will exist before Christ establishes his kingdom. The prophet Daniel spoke of a ruler who would bring sacrifices to an end. That statement immediately raises an obvious question. How can sacrifices be stopped if sacrifices have not first resumed? Centuries later, Jesus referred to Daniel's prophecy while speaking about the abomination of desolation. He warned his disciples that when they saw this event standing in the holy place, they should recognize its significance. His words caused generations of Christians to look beyond the destruction of the Second Temple towards something still future. Then the Apostle Paul added another remarkable detail. In 2 Thessalonians 2, he described the man of lawlessness exalting himself in God's temple and proclaiming himself to be God. Again, interpreters differ. Some understand this temple literally. Others believe Paul was speaking symbolically of God's spiritual people. Both views have been defended by sincere believers throughout church history. The book of Revelation contributes another intriguing piece. John is instructed to measure the temple of God, yet the outer court is handed over to the nations for a specific period. Some readers see this as another indication of a literal future sanctuary. Others interpret it symbolically within apocalyptic imagery. What becomes clear is that Scripture invites careful reflection rather than simplistic certainty. The Bible does not encourage speculation for its own sake. It encourages discernment. And regardless of where someone lands on the question of a literal third temple, nearly every Christian agrees on one point.
the events surrounding Jerusalem remain deeply significant within God's unfolding plan. That realization alone explains why so many eyes remain fixed on one city and one mount whose importance has endured through thousands of years of history. While Christians debate whether a third temple will one day stand in Jerusalem, something remarkable has been happening quietly behind the scenes. Preparations. Not rumors, actual preparations. For decades, organizations in Israel have devoted themselves to preserving the traditions, knowledge, and ceremonial items connected to temple worship. Ancient garments have been recreated. Priestly training has resumed among qualified descendants of Aaron. Sacred vessels described in the Old Testament have been carefully reconstructed. Even the menorah, one of the most recognizable symbols of the temple, has been crafted according to biblical specifications. These developments have captured the attention of prophecy students around the world. Then came another headline that reignited global interest: the discussion surrounding the red heifer. According to Numbers 19, the ashes of a flawless red heifer were required for ceremonial purification under the Mosaic Law. For generations, such an animal seemed impossible to find. Yet in recent years, reports of red heifers being raised for potential temple purposes spread rapidly across Christian media and news outlets. Some saw this as another prophetic milestone. Others urged caution, reminding believers that preparations do not necessarily mean fulfillment is imminent. That distinction matters. Throughout history, many events have appeared prophetically significant only for expectations to outpace reality. The Bible repeatedly warns against sensationalism. Jesus called his followers to remain watchful, not speculative. The difference is profound. Watchfulness is rooted in faith. Speculation is often driven by fear or excitement. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the Third Temple discussion is not whether construction begins tomorrow or decades from now. It is the desire for such a temple has survived nearly 2,000 years without one existing. Entire generations have come and gone. Empires have risen and fallen. Jerusalem has changed hands countless times, yet the expectation has remained. That alone makes the temple one of history's most extraordinary unfinished stories. Whether the final chapter arrives soon or centuries from now, Scripture reminds us that God's purposes unfold according to His timing, not ours. And that truth should produce confidence rather than anxiety.
There is another question that receives far less attention. What if the greatest significance of the Third Temple is not the building itself, but what happens inside it? Jesus warned his disciples about a coming deception so persuasive that, if possible, even the elect would be led astray. Paul described the man of lawlessness exalting himself and demanding worship. Daniel spoke of sacrifices being interrupted. These prophecies all point toward a deeper issue than architecture. They point toward worship. Throughout the Bible, the temple was never merely a beautiful structure. It represented God's dwelling among His people. It was the meeting place between heaven and earth. That is precisely why any future profanation of the temple would carry enormous spiritual significance. If a future world leader were to enter a sacred place and claim divine authority, the crisis would not simply be political, it would become spiritual. It would force humanity to answer the oldest question ever asked: who deserves our worship? That question has echoed since the Garden of Eden. It confronted Israel in the days of the golden calf. It challenged Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar. It resurfaced when Satan tempted Jesus by offering him the kingdoms of the world. And according to biblical prophecy, it will confront humanity again.
Perhaps that is why Scripture consistently directs our attention beyond buildings toward the condition of the heart. Under the New Covenant, believers themselves are described as God's temple, with His Spirit dwelling within them. This does not necessarily eliminate the possibility of a future literal temple, but it reminds us that God's greatest concern has always been the worshiper before the place of worship. A magnificent building cannot produce faithful hearts. Only God can. And perhaps that is the lesson modern believers need most as interest in the Third Temple continues to grow. The fascination surrounding the Third Temple is understandable. It combines archaeology, history, politics, prophecy, and theology into one extraordinary conversation. Few biblical subjects generate as much interest. Yet perhaps the greatest danger is allowing fascination to replace faithfulness. It is possible to know every theory about the Third Temple, every interpretation of Daniel, every debate surrounding Ezekiel, every headline from Jerusalem, and still neglect the very relationship with God that prophecy is meant to strengthen. Jesus never instructed His followers to obsess over prophetic timelines. He instructed them to remain ready, to remain faithful, to remain watchful. Those commands matter just as much today. Whether a third temple is built next year or generations from now, every believer faces the same daily calling: to love God with all the heart, to walk in obedience, to grow in discernment, to resist deception, to remain anchored in Scripture rather than speculation. The temple itself has always pointed beyond stone walls. In the Old Testament, it pointed toward God's presence. In the New Testament, it pointed toward Christ, who declared Himself greater than the temple. And through Him, believers are invited into a relationship that no earthly building could ever replace. Perhaps that is the most important truth of all. The question is not merely whether another temple will rise in Jerusalem. The greater question is whether our hearts are prepared for the return of the one to whom every prophecy ultimately points. Because one day, every debate will end, every prophecy will find its fulfillment, every kingdom will pass away, and every eye will behold the King of Kings. When that day arrives, the greatest preparation will never have been understanding every detail of the Third Temple. It will have been knowing the God whose presence no earthly building could ever fully contain.